So as we look at this lesson on Note 7.5, rational exponents and radicals, we're going to rewrite these expressions. And they can be confusing, but we're going to make it as simple here as possible. So we have our radical symbol. That's our square root sign. This looks like our square root sign. We call it the radical symbol. And then I gave an example below that. And remember, whatever I get written down, please write down as well. And this number on the inside is called the radicand. It's radicand. It's called the radicand. And I think if we all thought, what is the square root of 9, you guys and gals would know the answer would be 3. And you are correct. But we're going to go from, this is radical form. The square root of 9 is written in radical form. And we can actually write this as an exponent. So we can, and they're equivalent in value. And how we do that is we're going to take our radicand. That's going to be our base. And what power is the 9 to? Well, it's not written, but it's the power of 1. So it's going to be 9 to the power of 1. But because we have the radical symbol, it's going to be a fraction. And because this is the square root, it's going to be 1/2. So we have a number right here. And any time that it is not written, because you don't see a number there, I don't see a number there, it's assumed that we know it's the number 2. And this is called our index. Okay, and we're going to go back and forth between these. So we're going to, I gave you this example in radical form, and we wrote it as a rational exponent or an exponential form. And we're going to go back and forth. Let's just look at our 6 examples here, and I'm going to talk you through them. So this next one, it's in radical form, and we want to write it using a rational exponent, a fractional exponent. So we start with our base, which is 125. And there's no power, so we're just going to write to the power of 1. And what does your index say here? It says, our index says 3, so it's just 125 to the 1/3 power. That's it. Again, well, we'll get to one of those here maybe in a second. So let's go ahead and look at example 2. My base on example 2, it's in radical form. My base is a, and it's to the power of 2, so it's a squared. And what does your index say? Your index says 3, so it's a to the 2/3. So the first 2 examples were in radical form, and we wrote it as a rational exponent. Now example 3 and example 4 are written in rational exponent form, and we're going to go backwards. We're going to write it in radical form. A lot of R's here. So to go backwards, we're going to start with our radical symbol. And our base, our radicand is going to be b, and it's to the 4th power. And what would my index be on this one? It's going to be a 5. And so we're just kind of going backwards here. These are all equivalent in value. I talk about that a lot with, if you have a pile of 4 quarters and 100 pennies, they look totally different to our eyes, but they are the same value. Let's look at example 4. Put equals between all these actually, because they're all equal in value. Example 4. We got to be careful with example 4, because example 4, the 12 is just a whole number. That 12 is just going to be in front. It's just a whole number. It doesn't have a rational exponent, meaning it doesn't have a fractional exponent. So in the radical symbol is going to be your a squared, and what is your index going to be? It's going to be the number 3. Again, the number 12 is a whole number. Technically, the number 12's exponent is just 12 to the 1st power. So some of these can be a little tricky way we're looking at it. You're going to notice, we're going to look at example 5 and example 6, and what you're going to notice with those is that they are very similar. There is one thing different, and there is a set of parentheses on example 6. So you're gonna see how these can actually turn out to be different answers. Okay. On example 5, 12 is to the power of 1. It is in the radical symbol, but it is to the power of 1. So as we write this as a rational exponent, our base is 12 to the 1st power, and our index is 3. But our other base is a to the second power with an index of 3. So because we got to look at those as we're looking at every single part of the term and what the power is. And so that radicand had a 12 to the first power and an a squared. And so the difference between example 5 and example 6 is example 6 has the parentheses. So that means that the entire 12 and a is to the second power. So we have a couple different ways we could write this. First of all, we can look at it. I'll write it down here below. We can look at it as the 12 is to the second and the a is to the second. Okay. So we can look at that as the 12 has an index of 2 and there's a radical, the 12 has a power of 2 and the index is 3. So we can divide by 3 for our fractional exponent there. And a is to the power of 2 and our index is 3. So that's one way we could look at it. We just kind of broke it up just so we know that everything, that 12 and the a are both squared. But we also could just put parentheses and write the 12 and a in parentheses and know that they're both squared. And the index is 3, so it's 2/3. I know that was probably a little confusing. Some of these we've got to ask ourselves the first question I would say is, what is the exponent? Is it to the power of 1, to the power of 2? And then we've got to make sure we look at the index. And remember, if our index is not written, it's going to mean that it is a 2. So up here, what we learned at the very beginning is if we just had the square root of 9, that index is a 2 if it is not written. That's it.